This 1903 family portrait looks peaceful. A mother, a father, two children seated neatly in front of a velvet backdrop, proper posture, calm faces, perfectly still. The kind of photograph families once treasured, but historians noticed something no one was meant to see, something hidden in the mirror behind them. And once they saw it, they couldn't unsee it, because the mirror didn't reflect the family. It reflected what was watching them. The photograph was taken in the spring of 1903 in a small Midwestern town that no longer exists on modern maps. The Carter family had commissioned it to celebrate their new home, an old Victorian house inherited from a distant relative who died without explanation. The image survived when almost nothing else did. No birth records, no graves, no mention of how the Carters disappeared, only the photograph. At first glance, it's ordinary. Mr. Carter sits stiffly in a wooden chair, mustache trimmed, eyes fixed forward. Mrs. Carter stands beside him, hand resting lightly on his shoulder. Their daughter sits on a stool, hands folded in her lap. Their young son stands just behind her, one hand resting against the chair. Behind them hangs a tall mirror in an ornate frame. That mirror is where the problem begins, because the mirror does not reflect the room. It reflects a hallway, long, narrow, dark, and at the far end of that hallway stands a figure that does not appear anywhere else in the photograph. Historians initially dismissed it as a flaw in the glass. Old mirrors were imperfect, light warped, reflections bent, but flaws don't blink, and this one did. The photo entered academic circles in the late 1990s when a preservationist named Alan Whitaker digitized a private collection of early American family portraits. He noticed the hallway immediately. What disturbed him wasn't the figure. It was the way the children's hands were positioned. The daughter's fingers were folded together tightly, knuckles pale, as if she were gripping something invisible. The son's hand rested on the chair, but his fingers were curved unnaturally, bent inward, as though resisting a pull. Alan enlarged the image. That's when he saw the detail that made him push his chair back and stand up. The mirror showed hands, not the family's. Hands reaching out of the darkness of the hallway, pressed flat against the glass from the other side. Too many of them. The Carter home had a history long before the Carters arrived. Built in the 1840s, it had passed through owners quickly. No family stayed more than a few years. Locals whispered about the watching place, though no one could explain why. Children refused to play near the house. Animals wouldn't cross the threshold. Mirrors inside the home were always covered. When the Carters moved in, they uncovered every one of them. They wanted light, space, reflection. They wanted the house to feel lived in. Neighbors reported strange behavior almost immediately. The children stopped playing outside. Mrs. Carter was seen speaking to mirrors, standing close enough that her breath fogged the glass. Mr. Carter nailed the bedroom mirrors to the wall so they wouldn't move. He claimed they were sliding at night. The family hired a traveling photographer in April of that year. The photographer, Elias Moore, later wrote one sentence in his journal that would be dismissed for decades. The mirror behind them would not stay empty. During the sitting, Elias complained of headaches and dizziness. He claimed the room felt crowded, though only the family was present. He adjusted the mirror repeatedly, insisting it reflected something that wasn't there. Mr. Carter told him to leave it. "It likes to see us together," he said. The shutter clicked. The photograph was taken. That night, the neighbors heard screaming. Not loud, not frantic, controlled, like someone trying very hard not to be heard. By morning, the Carter house was silent, locked, undisturbed. The family was never seen again. No blood, no signs of struggle. No bodies, only mirrors. Every one of them cracked from the inside. When the photograph was enhanced further in modern times, another detail emerged. The mirror figure had a face. It wasn't clear at first, just the suggestion of features. But frame by frame, enhancement by enhancement, it sharpened. It was smiling, not a human smile, a stretched imitation of one. And its hands were positioned exactly like the children's. Historians began reporting symptoms after prolonged study of the image. Hand cramps, finger numbness, the sensation of pressure, as if palms were being pressed together by unseen force. One researcher woke to find his bathroom mirror covered in handprints from the inside. Another claimed the photograph had changed. The hallway in the mirror was closer, shorter, as if whatever stood there had taken a step forward. I first saw the image late at night, alone, after everyone else had left. The archive was quiet. Too quiet. I stared at the family, at the calm faces, at the mirror, and then I noticed something new. The daughter's hands were no longer folded. They were reaching backward, toward the mirror. And for the first time, I understood what the photograph truly was. It wasn't capturing a moment. It was recording a transfer, because whatever lived inside that mirror didn't appear in reflections. It appeared in families. It watched them, waited, and when they stood still long enough, it took their place. And somewhere behind the glass, the hallway was getting closer. I didn't leave the archive after that, not because I was brave, but because the photograph wouldn't let me. Every time I tried to close the file, my fingers hesitated. Every time I looked away from the screen, the pressure in my palms returned, steady and insistent, like hands guiding mine back into place. The mirror in the photograph felt closer now, not physically larger, but nearer in a way that had nothing to do with distance. I enlarged the image again. The hallway reflected in the mirror was no longer empty, except for the figure at the end. Shapes lined the walls now, tall, thin impressions, like silhouettes burned into darkness. The longer I stared, the clearer they became. They were doorways, dozens of them, each one slightly ajar. I cross-referenced the Carter family with property records, census fragments, newspaper clippings. The town, once called Hollow Creek, had been quietly erased after a series of unexplained disappearances in the early 1900s. Fires. Abandonments. Families leaving overnight. One detail repeated across every account. Mirrors were always found broken, not shattered outward, cracked inward, as if something had struck them from the other side. The Carter children, Eleanor and Samuel, were described by neighbors as, quote, but attentive. Too attentive. Samuel especially had a habit of staring at reflective surfaces, windows, silverware, water barrels for long stretches of time. When asked what he was looking at, he once replied, "Someone who lives behind us." Mrs. Carter began covering mirrors shortly after moving in. Then she stopped. According to a letter she sent to her sister, she believed covering them made it angry. "It likes to be seen," she wrote. "It says it keeps us together." The night before the photograph was taken, the Carters hosted a small dinner. Only one guest attended, a neighbor named Ruth Bell. Ruth later testified that during the meal, none of the family touched their food. They sat perfectly still, watching the mirror. Ruth excused herself early. As she left, she claimed she heard someone whisper her name, not from the house but from her own reflection in the front window. She never returned. Back in the archive, the lights flickered. I became aware of a presence behind me, not a sound, not a breath, but a subtle displacement in the air, like a reflection without a source. I turned slowly. The room was empty, but the glass on the display case beside me had fogged. From the inside, handprints pressed outward, fingers splayed, slowly sliding down the glass. My hands went numb. On the screen, the mirror image shifted again. The figure in the hallway was closer now. Tall, bent slightly at the neck, as if adjusting itself to human posture. Its face remained indistinct, but its eyes were clear. They were looking directly at me. And the children in the photograph were no longer looking at the camera. They were looking at the mirror. Their expressions hadn't changed, but something else had. Understanding. The photograph was not changing randomly. It was responding. I remembered something Elias Moore had written in the margin of his journal, something I had dismissed as delirium. It needs to be noticed. If it is ignored, it searches elsewhere. My reflection appeared faintly over the image on the screen. For a moment, my face overlapped the mirror behind the Carter family, and in that overlap I saw it. The hallway behind the glass wasn't in the Carter house. It was in every house that had ever accepted it. A space folded behind reflective surfaces. A waiting place. The mirror did not show the creature because it lived in mirrors. It showed it because mirrors were doors. The Carter family hadn't been taken. They had been replaced. The realization hit with sudden clarity. The people in the photograph weren't the Carters anymore. They were imitations, still, obedient, posed, while the real family stood somewhere behind the glass, watching through reflections, unable to leave. The pressure in my hands intensified. I looked down. My fingers were positioned exactly like the daughters in the image. Folded, waiting. The archive lights went out completely. In the darkness, I heard glass shift. Not breaking, opening. And from every reflective surface in the room, screens, cases, polished floors, I felt eyes begin to look back. The darkness in the archive was thick enough to taste. My heart pounded in my ears as I fumbled for my phone's flashlight. The beam barely cut through the black, illuminating rows of empty shelves and dust motes dancing like ghosts. Then I saw it. The mirror in the corner of the room, a simple old framed piece left behind from the building's previous occupant. It wasn't reflecting the archive. It was showing something else. A narrow, endless hallway. Dimly lit, shadows pooling at the far end. The figure from the photograph stood there. Closer now, watching. I stepped forward, voice barely a whisper. "What do you want?" The hallway flickered. The figure stretched its neck unnaturally, turning toward me with a smile that was too wide to be human. Behind me, I heard faint footsteps. Not mine. I whipped around. Empty. But then the air shifted. The temperature dropped. My hands shook uncontrollably. On the floor, the reflection of the mirror seemed to ripple, as if water disturbed. From the edges of the frame, thin, pale hands pressed against the glass from inside. Fingertips scratched, leaving faint marks that glowed faintly in the dark. I stumbled back, heart hammering. In that moment, a memory surfaced. Elias Moore's journal. The mirror will take you if you look too long. It wants to hold you. Hold us all. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered and died. I was swallowed by the cold black. Then, a voice, soft and distant. Hold still. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only watch as the figure in the mirror reached toward me, its fingers elongated, stretching through the glass as if the barrier was paper thin. A sharp, icy pain seized my wrist. I glanced down. My hand was bending involuntarily, the same unnatural curve I'd seen in the photograph. The daughter's hand, the son's hand, and now mine. I tried to pull away, but something invisible gripped my arm, dragging me closer to the mirror. Whispers echoed around me, voices of the lost Carters trapped behind glass, begging for release. Stay with us. Don't leave. Hold still. The room dissolved into a swirling void of reflections. Each mirror, each glass surface became a window into that endless hallway. I was becoming part of the photograph, one more set of hands folded, waiting, watching. I woke hours later on the archive floor, the morning light filtering weakly through the windows. The mirror was gone. The archive lights had returned, but my hands were trembling uncontrollably. And when I looked down, my fingers were curled inward, waiting. Days passed, but the trembling in my hands never stopped. Every reflection I passed caught my eye, windows, spoons, the glossy surface of my phone, and I saw them, the shadows lurking just beyond the glass, the waiting hallway. At night, the nightmares came. I was back inside the mirror, trapped in that endless corridor. The walls whispered names. My name, the names of the Carter family, of everyone who had ever stood too long before a mirror like that. Each step echoed with the soft padding of feet behind me. I dared not look back, because the thing watching didn't just want to be seen. It wanted to be free. One morning, I found a letter slipped under my apartment door. No return address, no signature, just a single line. Hold still, or we come for you. I called Alan Whitaker, the preservationist who first digitized the photograph. His voice was trembling when he answered. I'm leaving town, he said. They're coming. Who? I asked. The ones in the mirrors. The ones who never left. Before I could ask more, his line went dead. Days later, news broke that Alan's house had burned down. No survivors, no bodies, no trace, except mirrors, shattered from the inside. I realized then that the photograph wasn't just a window. It was a trap, a prison, and the more people who looked, the more it fed. It didn't want us to see. It wanted us to stay, to become part of its endless family. I wanted to destroy the photo, burn it, smash it, but each attempt failed. The image refused to vanish. Every time I tried, my hands forced me to look, to watch, to wait. One night, as I sat staring at the screen, the reflection shifted again. This time, the hallway extended into my room. The figure stepped forward, closer. I felt cold breath on my neck. A whisper. Hold still. We are waiting. My vision blurred. The last thing I saw was my own reflection folding into the glass. And then, darkness. I woke in a cold sweat, heart hammering like a drum. But I wasn't in my apartment anymore. I was in the hallway. The one from the mirror. Endless. Dark. Silent. The walls stretched endlessly on either side. Doors barely cracked. Faint light seeping through. I tried to move, but my feet felt rooted to the floor. From the darkness ahead, the figure appeared. Not menacing anymore. Almost hopeful. Its eyes locked onto mine. I've been waiting for you, it said softly. I'm not alone here. None of us are. The voices began. Soft murmurs growing into a chorus. Voices of families lost to mirrors. Of people who looked too long, who tried to hold on, but became held. I'm sorry, I whispered. Sorry I saw. Sorry I stayed. The figure reached out its hand. I wanted to pull away, but my own hand rose, fingers trembling, reaching, touching. The coldness seeped through. Not pain, not fear, peace. I was fading, but not alone. The hands, the waiting hands, were holding me. No longer a prisoner, but part of the reflection, part of the endless family behind the glass. The next morning, my apartment was empty. No sign of struggle, no note, only the faintest impression on the bathroom mirror. 2 handprints pressed flat from the inside. Waiting, watching. This is what happens when you look too long. When you stay, when you don't let go. And some mirrors never forget. Some reflections hide more than just your image. They hide stories, secrets, shadows that never leave. Tonight's story isn't just about a family or a photograph. It's about what happens when the past refuses to stay behind glass. When something watches, waits, and wants to be part of your world. If you've ever looked too long into a mirror, if you've ever felt like something was watching back. Remember this: some reflections aren't real, and some doors should never be opened. Thank you for joining me on Forgotten Remains, where forgotten memories come alive and the darkest stories never stay buried. If this story chilled you to the bone, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Because some things are better remembered, and some are better left forgotten.